There's this chess match that happens between New York State and its 62 counties around unfunded mandates. These are when the state says, hey, counties, you have to provide this service, public defenders, probation, certain public assistance programs, but we're not going to pay for much or all of it. And the counties push back and try to get more of those programs reimbursed in the state budget. The biggest of these mandates is Medicaid. And it looks like the state is making its play for counties to take on more of the cost. That's today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Long Run Wealth, an SEC-registered investment advisor in Lake Placid, providing comprehensive wealth management, retirement, and financial planning solutions. LongRunWealth.com. And from SciTech Business Solutions, training and consulting services to help businesses grow. More information at citec.org.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Wednesday, May 10th. First up, New York State is monitoring rising water levels on Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence River, which are getting close to flood stage in some low-lying areas. Even though there's been little rain in the North Country since last week, all the Great Lakes empty into Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence, and the whole region's seen a lot of heavy spring rain. In a press release yesterday, Governor Kathy Hochul said Lake Ontario has risen above 247 feet. The lowest areas, mostly around Rochester, can flood at 248 feet. Hochul said the state is being proactive, ready to deploy 25,000 sandbags, as well as pumps and other equipment, even though she said the current forecast doesn't call for the widespread flooding seen in 2017 and 2019. Since those floods, the state has invested up to $300 million to fortify shorelines from western New York to Ogdensburg, with 38 projects already complete or underway in Jefferson and St. Lawrence counties, including in Cape Vincent, Clayton, and Alexandria Bay. There's 1 month to go until the 2023 New York State legislative session ends. A number of issues are still on the table to be negotiated. Karen DeWitt takes a look.
Some major items didn't make it into the state budget, which was passed over a month late on May 2nd. One is Governor Kathy Hochul's ambitious plan to build 800,000 housing units in the next decade to help ease the affordable housing crisis. It included a proposal to allow the state to override local zoning laws if local government leaders resisted plans to build new homes and apartments. The legislature objected to that, and the governor eventually dropped all of her housing proposals from the budget. Democrats who lead the Senate and Assembly also want any housing package to include more rights for tenants. The governor, speaking in late April after she announced a conceptual budget agreement, says she'll try again.
We're going to take the time necessary to talk about other ways that we can make sure that we're building housing stock. I'm going to be looking at the suburbs. We're going to talk about our transit hubs and find a path forward because we're not surrendering on this issue.
But Hochul says with so little time left in the session, any action to ease the housing crisis might have to wait until 2024.
Let's sit down with the housing chairs and come up with a thoughtful approach, work on it throughout the next year as well, and look at it again next year's budget.
The new budget does include changes to the state's bail reform laws, but some other criminal justice changes did not make it. A measure known as Clean Slate is gaining some momentum and key backing. It would expunge the records for some people convicted of crimes who've served their sentences, giving them a better chance to get a job. The state's Business Council supports it, and many companies, including National Grid, have recently come out in favor of it. And Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie says it's a top priority.
I think we will definitely consider clean slate before the end of session.
Survivors of sexual harassment, including former Fox News anchor Gretchen Carlson, are pressing for a bill that would outlaw non-disclosure agreements of all kinds. Carlson, who sued the former head of Fox News, Roger Ailes, for harassment and retaliation, signed a non-disclosure agreement as part of a settlement. As a result, she says she can't talk publicly about what's happened, even though it's been the subject of numerous news articles and even a Hollywood movie. Carlson has since co-founded the survivors advocacy group Lift Our Voices.
This bill puts the power back in the hands of the survivors. If we've learned anything since the beginning of this movement 6.5 years ago, it's that the only way to fix bad behavior at work is to be able to talk about it. We need to stop silencing people with forced arbitration and NDAs. Every worker deserves a voice.
The push comes at a time when 2 members of the state assembly have been accused of harassment. It also comes as Governor Hochul fired a top political advisor, Adam Sullivan, over allegations that he fostered a toxic work environment and was demeaning to younger women on the governor's staff. Other measures being considered as the session winds down include aid in dying. That would give terminally ill people the right to use medication to end their lives at the time of their choosing, and bills to strengthen voting rights, including a requirement that ballot amendments be written in plain, easy-to-understand language. The legislature could stay past the final day of session, scheduled for June 8th, if they wanted more time to tackle these issues. But Speaker Hastie says that's unnecessary.
I don't see the need to extend session by any days at this point.
Last year, the session also ended in early June to leave time for primary elections at the end of the month. But lawmakers reconvened in early July to strengthen the state's gun laws after a U.S. Supreme Court decision struck down the state's concealed carry statute. In Albany, I'm Karen DeWitt.
Beginning this year, the state will start to withhold hundreds of millions of federal dollars it usually passes to counties to fund Medicaid, the health insurance program for low-income people. County leaders and North Country lawmakers in both parties say the move could mean higher local property taxes. The governor's office says the funds will be used to improve Medicaid. Kara Chapman reports.
In New York State, counties have to chip in for Medicaid costs. For years, they've gotten federal funding that gets filtered through the state to help them do that. But that's about to change. Over the next few years, the state is going to reduce, then zero out the federal dollars it sends down to counties for Medicaid. State Senator Dan Steck puts it this way.
The federal government's grandma and grandpa, and they decide to give the grandchildren money, that would be the counties, and the parents step in and taking that money out of the grandkids' pockets. That's what the state is doing here.
Steck represents the North Country's eastern portion. He says the counties in his district will have to pay anywhere from $1 to $3 million more per year in Medicaid costs. According to Spectrum News, the Nonpartisan Citizens Budget Commission estimates the change could raise property taxes by 7 to 14%. Clinton County Administrator Mike Zerlo, who's also president of the New York State Association of Counties, says county governments will have some big decisions to make.
Do they reduce services? Do they raise taxes? Do they deplete reserves? Those are all options that we're going to be faced with going forward.
Governor Kathy Hochul initially proposed keeping all the money that usually goes to counties for Medicaid starting this year. But both houses of the legislature rejected that and negotiated a 3-year phase-out in the budget. When it's fully implemented in fiscal year 2026, it's estimated the state will keep about $774 million. In a statement, a spokesperson for the governor said the 3-year off-ramp will help counties plan for future budgets. But Assemblyman Billy Jones says it's not enough time for the counties to adjust.
They're not happy with it. I wasn't happy with it. But I will say bluntly that the governor could have done that in policy anyway. She could have just done it with a stroke of a pen or a phone call.
The governor's spokesperson said the state has helped counties and New York City save almost $38 billion in Medicaid costs since 2015. They said shifting the federal money will allow the state to fund investments, quote, to ensure access, promote equity, and stabilize the health system serving New York's most vulnerable. The spokesperson said this year's budget includes more than $6 billion in major local aid programs for counties outside New York City. Even Zerlo says highway and public health funding were among the bright spots for counties in the budget. But he says this was not the year to go after the Medicaid funds.
There was no urgent need to come after county governments this year. We have always been a partner. If we were ever in a crisis, I know that the Association of Counties would have worked with the administration and tried to figure out something to ameliorate the state's issue. This was not the year. For no reason they came after our money this year.
Zerlo says counties plan to continue to lobby for the funding to be restored. But he says once you're used to a revenue stream, it's very difficult to let it go. Kara Chapman, North Country Public Radio, Plattsburgh.
We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Eddie Lawrence of Moira and Eric Pasternak of Bloomingdale. I'm David Sommerstein, North Country Public Radio.